Welcome to the Smack Happy Design Videocast, where we explore all things web and marketing. With your hosts, Nicole and Danielle.
So let's talk about delegating. How would you go about figuring out what to delegate or figuring out what is delegatable?
I'd say, so the simplest way to start is to simply look at your to-do list and figure out what are the things that you don't want to do or that immediately someone else could do, like it'd be easily transferable and therefore you could have someone else do it. So that'd be the easiest, like simplest sort of low-hanging fruit to figure out is just look at your to-do list right now and what are the things you could have someone else do. But then after that, probably I think what a lot of us business owners face is that, well, they could do that, they could do that, they could do that, but they would need to know this and they would need to know that. And all of that is in my head. So how do I get it out of my head so that someone else could do it? And so then you'd want to build systems. And so that's what makes it delegatable is if it's a system so that it's out of your head and sort of a step-by-step process to get a task done, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then, so those are, say, like the two biggest ways to figure out what to delegate is first look at, I know the hot phrase these days is zone of genius. So what's outside your zone of genius or that you just don't know how to do or don't enjoy doing, like what's always at the bottom of your to-do list. And then if you can't immediately delegate it, figure out how to build a system around it. And that might even mean making the task as small until that little piece is delegatable. An example is I met a business owner. He had built a whole system around prospecting. And so the first phase was sort of researching who to contact, their contact information. The second phase was actually calling them. And then the third phase was taking notes and keeping notes on what the conversation was about. And so, but he was afraid to let all of that go. And so I was like, well, why don't you just start with one part? Like just delegate the research side of things. And then once you're comfortable with that, maybe delegate the note side of things. And once you're comfortable with that, then delegate the actual calls part. And so that's what I mean by just break it down until it's something that you're comfortable having someone else do.
I'm thinking, like, how can I delegate all of my meetings? Just kidding, but not really. That's like my least favorite. Not that I don't love meeting with like amazing people all the time, but it's just like I never could figure out for myself like the best process to like get myself back into like one hat from another, like when you're in a meeting and then you're doing meetings and you're in that meeting flow and then you have to go and do something like way different and it's just hard to like get back into it.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't know if anyone else struggles with, but that's like my biggest struggle. And I was thinking about that when you were talking about delegating and I was like, well, I don't think I can do that. So kind of stuck.
It might be how do you structure your day or your week?
Yeah.
I was doing recruiting. Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays were big task-heavy days for us because we'd post the job on Monday, look at resumes on Thursdays, phone screen on Fridays, and the following Monday type thing. So yeah. I would schedule all my meetings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so I knew on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was not doing any office work. I was just going from meeting to meeting to meeting. So that's how I did it. But also when I first started out, I realized I get really sleepy in the afternoons. Most people do, right? But if I scheduled meetings in the morning, I would just take a nap in the afternoon. I wouldn't get any work done. And so I realized I'm most productive in the mornings. So now all my meetings will usually be in the afternoons so that I'm productive in the mornings. I'm engaged with people, therefore not sleepy in the afternoons. And that's how I was able to balance that. So I don't know if those ideas are helpful, but
that is helpful.
Structure your day.
I think in a way we do have our set, like I personally have a set schedule where people can schedule meetings and it's in the more productive part of the day. There's so many like things that change, I think, for all of us, like when we work from home and trying to figure out the kids, the dogs, the plans, the doctor's appointments, and everything else. So, but yeah, I think maybe if I could try doing more of like, the productivity part of it, like where am I most productive, and maybe trying to figure out how to arrange things better that way. Week to week. It would be week to week for sure. But yeah, those are great suggestions. And I think I can think of at least 3 people who I've worked with client-wise that could probably do the same thing, and it would help them as well.
And that's actually a great example of systematizing, right? And so it might even be like you're saying, because you're having to juggle kids and appointments and things like that. But let's say you set for example, Tuesday and Wednesday as your meeting days, then that becomes the rule in the family. Like no doctor's appointments on that day, or someone else has to pick up the kids from school that day or take them to their activities. Like that becomes part of your system, is the rules, the parameters around that system. So if that's a meeting day, then everything else everyone knows that that's a meeting day and everything should flow around that.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I also liked the way that you kind of broke it down in your example, because the first thing I think when you say, well, you have to create a system, I think, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, right? But if you're tackling it, like little pieces at a time and like gradually getting through it, then that makes it way more doable.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I was really thinking about that too, I feel like every time if you Google, how do I delegate or something like that, one step is always build a system, but it doesn't say how to build a system. And so because of that, we developed a way to help people build systems. And there's basically 3 components. There's a trigger, tools, and actions. And so the trigger, I think, is a key component that's missing in a lot of systems, is what causes that system to go into action, right? And so in the example of the meetings, Tuesday is the trigger, right? Or it might be, in our case, whenever we get a new client, they fill out a form. So when they fill out that form, that launches a message to us. So that's the trigger for us to start matching them with a virtual assistant, right? So that's the key thing, is automating that trigger as much as possible. And I don't mean automating using technology, but that could be an option, but no like decision or action needs to take place. So in our case, that form triggers us, right? In the systems example, Tuesday is the trigger, right? And then tools are like the software needed, and even like the logins for the software, but also the rules and parameters, right? So if, for example, if it's voicemail monitoring, they need to know, calling people, like confirming appointments, they need to know the script for what to say when they're calling people to confirm appointments. And also like if something needs to be rescheduled, what are the rules around rescheduling? Like what's your calendar? What are Tuesday only would be the rule, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then how would you want to be notified? Like, do you want an email summary, or do you just want to say you don't want to know anything, you just know it was handled? So those are the rules. And then the actions are what are the steps of the system, right? So those are the 3 things: triggers, tools, actions to create a system.
Thank you for listening to the Smack Happy Design videocast. For more information and downloads, visit smackhappy.com/videocast, where you'll find more episodes and the opportunity to subscribe on YouTube or iTunes. You can also sign up for our newsletter delivered to your inbox monthly. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Again, that's smackhappy.com/videocast. See you next time.